Hello and welcome to another session of Informally Formal. We have with us Dr. Masrur Reaz. We started our informally formal programs with him. So my audience can well imagine what I think of this fine gentleman. So it's great to have him back. So Dr. Masrur Reaz is the Chairman of Policy Exchange Bangladesh. Before that, he has held many senior level positions with IFC, the World Bank Group, in various countries in Asia. So without further ado, let's see what our topic is today and get right into it. So our today's topic is institutional reform and the need for it. And of course, we're going to be talking from a Bangladesh perspective. So Dr. Masrur Reaz, a very warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Mr. Hakim. It is indeed a great privilege and a pleasure to be back in this wonderful program that you have rolled out, and I can see how well it has been received across the board, professionals, government, entrepreneurs. So it is really a pleasure to be back.
Thank you. Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. Masrur, let's get started. So first and foremost, of course, you know, in a growing economy, there are just so many levers, so many needs. We talk about foreign direct investment, we talk about infrastructure, we talk about debt to GDP, we talk about taxes. There is just no end because, you know, we are still growing and we're still learning. But what I find, Masrur, is one of the key areas that people are just so very reluctant to talk about is the fact that we need to have our institutions performing at their peak as well. Otherwise, a lot of that effort is lost. So our topic, very aptly today, institutional reform. So set a stage for us. Masrur, please set a stage for us as to where Bangladesh is in terms of institutional reforms that we need to put together, put forward, push it through, but not very many people are talking about it. So Masrur, your views on where we are at right now.
Thank you, Akber. So what a wonderful and relevant and timely question in the context of Bangladesh's development journey. You very rightly say that Bangladesh has done wonders in terms of its development and economic and social progress. Poverty was more than halved, trade, manufacturing, industry, they've all significantly increase their own participation or share within the GDP or in the economic growth. On social development progress, Bangladesh outperforms most of its South Asian neighbors on most account. Just to give you one example, Bangladesh is the most gender empowered country in the entire South Asia and better than many countries in the world and certainly in Asia. Now, why did we get to, or how did we get to such an impressive sort of trajectory? Several factors worked. One, economic liberalization, sound macro economic fundamentals, greater or increasing trade deepening across the board, both through manufacturing, primarily through manufacturing, merchandise goods, but also through services, the migrant worker story that we all talk about. But there has been also very focused policy as well as programs into the social side as well, both by the government and the non-government partners. And private sector overall emerged as an engine of this growth. Unfortunately, what did not commensurate with this excellent progress was the institutional development of the country. The institutions, what are the institutions, or what is an institutional framework which together makes this whole institutional scene relevant to the development? Institutions are the agencies within the state which are entrusted with the authorities and responsibilities for policy formal and regulatory formulation, delivery of such policy and regulatory instruments, and providing the necessary services to its citizens. And the institutional framework refers to the overall policy, legal, regulatory, procedural, authority, responsibilities that entrust or that empower these state institutions to deliver these services to its citizen, to be accountable to its citizens, to provide or ensure rule of law in a transparent manner. Now, the liberalization, particularly, let me focus a little more on the economic governance side, where these institutions are really important to the economic growth. So our institution, as they exist at the moment, they did not keep pace with the economic liberalization that started in the 70s, gained momentum in 80s and 90s, whether it's in the financial sector or in trade or the growth of small and medium enterprises through smoother or transparent or effective entry operations and exits in the private sector. What also did not happen during this time is the state, the state governance part, which actually relate to the institutions. Take the example of public financial management. An example of how strong the state institutions are. You can actually, the efficiency or effectiveness of the public financial management is a great testament to that. With less than 10% tax GDP ratio in the country, with questions around the quality of expenditures, particularly the annual development programs, where we are seeing overrun of costs often by 50 to 100%, or in some cases several times through the implementation life of a public investment project. These all do not give the confidence that Bangladesh has the institutional capability that is required for a lower middle income country, for a country which is about to graduate from least developed country status in less than 4 years' time, and is not going to support Bangladesh's journey in a more competitive or a high pressured environment in its way towards upper middle income state and a developed state by 2041.
Right. Masrur, I was in a conversation with Dr. Ahsan Mansoor on just yesterday, I believe, or day before yesterday. Believe it or not, the tax to GDP this year is going to come out to be about 7.5%. So it's just, of course, we understand the environment that we are in. Everyone expected it to be lower, except of course the government that thought that they were going to raise
350,000.
So that also points towards institutional capabilities that doesn't necessarily exist in Bangladesh. We have not done a whole lot in institutional reform, because this is the citizenry complaining, saying that, services are not performed, we get nothing back in return. Of course, our tax net is low, the revenue collection is low by the government, but at the same time, the citizenry feels that, they get nothing in return. Number one. Number two, also is I believe it has a lot to do with mindset as well. We need to have some schooling as far as mindset goes. I believe then a lot of these institutional reforms can be put in place. I don't know. I'm just rambling on, Masrur.
No, these are all very relevant points, Mr. Hakim. I think you touch upon some really important pieces of the institutional puzzle, mindset, service delivery, citizens, civil, I think you alluded to civil servants or government employees delivering that. So I think to put all of this together, and your thoughts are absolutely relevant and valid. So to understand it better, let's unpack this whole institution, this puzzle called institution, as it applies to governance, growth, statecraft, citizen service. Yeah. So what we have there, we have a number of elements. First and foremost is actually the vision around institutions. This part is essentially political. What is the the vision? What is the aspiration? How do the politicians who represent people of a country want to see the institutions perform, what do they like to see the institutions do, and how would they like the institutions deliver what they're supposed to do. So it's, first of all, the role of institutions that comes from very much the political vision and ownership. So first and foremost is the role of institution as envisioned by the politicians and the people's representatives. Secondly, what I referred to during my first first set of remarks, which is the institutional framework, the laws, regulations, and so on, which basically gives the overarching authority and responsibility and defines what they can and cannot do. Thirdly, very important, and it is becoming more important, slightly at a micro level, but on a day-to-day, you refer to the experience of citizens. You refer to gaps between citizens' expectation and what institutions are delivering. These are processes and procedures by which the state institutions are expected to deliver the service, to enforce the laws and responsibilities they are entrusted to deliver with. That is where I think the focus and the attention has been missing in many developing countries for a very long period, while the leaders, the civil servants were focusing a lot on the sort of high profile elements of institutions, which are the laws and the policies and the regulations. But how about these very micro process and procedures which define how quickly, how efficiently, how openly, how transparently the institutions are going to do their part of the job? That's where our country falls a lot behind. This micro process and procedures, which are really turning into the bigger part of the pie in terms of the problem. We have lots of good laws and policies. I mean, a lot of the policies and the laws in Bangladesh are really written in a very progressive way, in a very facilitative way. But where Bangladesh has been struggling, both in terms of government to business service delivery, government to citizen service delivery, is enforcement of those, which are governed by two things. One I've just mentioned is the process and procedures which form a big part of the institution, but also something you also touched upon, capacity. The capacity of those who are eventually a machine and a law and a policy is as good as the people who are in charge of delivering them and enforcing them. I think capacity, while it has increased to some extent compared to 70s and 80s, experts, private sector would argue that the capacities fall far behind than what is required by a lower middle income country that we are today. So the capacity, the determinants of capacity, enablers of capacity within the state institutions, which are providing this government to business, government to citizen services, they need to evolve with the world. They need to evolve with Bangladesh's own development performance and trajectory, and they need to shape themselves up in terms of where Bangladesh needs to be in 10 years' time and 20 years' time.
Okay. Masrur, you covered quite a bit out there. If we have great institutions and stuff, if people have faith in those institutions, all the projects and stuff that we see, not just projects, just delivery of services, rule of law, all of those things. Can you imagine what Bangladesh would be like? We all know that institutional reforms are necessary. In the next few minutes, put your thoughts together and tell us really concrete some of the things that we ought to try and see if we can put in place to make some changes in this space.
This reform, which is, I fully agree with you, is absolutely critical. It should have started many years back, but it's never late to start good things. It needs to start now, but it needs to start with the right political vision. The political leaders need to set very clearly how and where they would like to see the institutions evolve in next 3 years, next 5 years, and next 10 years. And that has to be in line with Bangladesh's development aspirations. You cannot be in isolation. It cannot be over a short term, number one. Number two, the mindset, we talked about that. The mindset needs to be progressive. I think as you try to do institutional reforms, what happens is you, in any country, you often take away two things. One, long-established way of delivering business within government institutions. So it's a comfort zone for bureaucrats, you have to understand. Second, you also take away a lot of authority or maybe discretionary powers. So you do get pushback, sometimes willingly, sometimes subconsciously, from the civil servants who are actually in charge of delivering institutions' mandates, right? So the mindset of the civil servants need to be curated. Thirdly, what you're going to need is a lot of technology. That's something you mentioned in the context of, I think, taxes. I think technology cannot do magic on its own, because eventually the technologies are set or designed by human beings, and the machines and the programs are as good as the operators, human operators, who actually put them into use. However, that said, technology can still bring in transparency. Technology can bring in efficiency. Technology can bring in integration or interoperability that is much needed in any government in the world. Finally, I would say the capacity of those who are going to actually not only deliver better institutions once they are reformed, but also who are going to actually deliver the changes in the institution that we're looking for, primarily the civil service. So there again, it has to be, one has to consider the political economy within the institution. Big bang is necessary, but big bang perhaps, in a one blow may not be practical. One has to really align things to how the political economy exists within these institutions in terms of politics, civil servants, governance, and citizens. So the civil servants, motivation needs to come in, their capacity, their understanding, their awareness of how these changes can be brought about and how the reformed and improved institution can be enforced. Those all need to sort of be developed or further strengthened before we can think of a sort of, overnight improvement is not going to happen, but a medium to long-term strategy before we roll out all of these, the political ownership, the vision, the strategy, the technology, the mindset, and the capacity to roll out and implement reforms. They all need to be in place as soon as possible.
Right. Masrur, we're running out of time here, so we just have to wrap it up right here. But you're absolutely right. Nothing happens overnight, but the recognition of that there is a problem, and there is really a massive problem. That's a good start. What I find,
a fantastic start. That will be a fantastic start, and much needed, by the way. Without that, there is no second step.
Exactly. And to point out, that that I have problems. That doesn't mean I love myself any less. It means that I want to improve myself. So when I point out that, listen, I'll be the first one to wave the flag and say, and rightfully so, and very proud of the achievements that Bangladesh has accomplished, in the last decade or so. We are the talk of the town, so to speak. But then at the same time, we cannot keep celebrating and we are so good. No. Where can we improve? What all can we do to make us 10 times better? Okay. So we need to get out of the mindset of where, if we say something that is not so kosher, that you're somehow less patriotic or you love Bangladesh any less. That is not the case at all. I would wish and hope that the first and foremost, like you said as well, Masrur, is to recognize that, we can do so much better, right? Masrur, you've brought up some very excellent points and stuff, and unfortunately, again, we're always pressed for time in these sessions, so wish I had more time, but we'll have to wrap up this session right here. So, Dr. Masrur Reaz, thank you very much for your time today, and I would like to thank our audience for joining us for this session. As always, I enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Stay safe. Catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.